Her daughter set 4 plates for dinner, while Virginia stood watching, uninvited. She didn't shout, didn't ask why. Megan, once her closest confidant, served the meal and never looked back. By morning, her name vanished from the deed, the trust, and the inheritance she never earned. Virginia had spent a lifetime giving quietly, endlessly. Now the silence would speak for her, and the paper trail would do the rest. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. She didn't blink, didn't falter. The white porcelain clinked softly against the table as Megan laid the last fork beside Eli's plate, 4 in total. The dining room light was too bright, humming faintly overhead, making the silence feel louder than it had any right to be. Virginia stood in the doorway, coat still buttoned, purse dangling from her wrist. She was exactly on time, as she always had been for 45 years. And yet the table was full, full without her. "I thought we were having a little birthday dinner," she said gently, like a question without a question mark. Megan's mouth curved, but her eyes stayed flat. "We only made enough for 4. Her tone was crisp, final, as if this had been communicated already, as if Virginia had just forgotten. But she hadn't. Eli glanced at her, then down at his lap. Grant didn't even look up from his phone, mumbling something that sounded like bad timing. The scent of roast chicken floated through the room, layered with rosemary and garlic. Virginia's own recipe, she noted absently. She walked in slowly, unbuttoning her coat one loop at a time. No one moved to help. No one stood to greet her. On the sideboard sat a birthday card in shimmering gold print, "To Mom with love." But it was still sealed, unsigned, for show. "I can just sit over here," she said, motioning toward the edge of the couch. "That's probably best," Megan said, already turning back to the oven. Virginia eased down, knees aching, and balanced a paper napkin on her lap. No plate, no silverware, just a glass of water. Grant handed her without making eye contact. It was warm. She looked around the room slowly. The walls had been repainted a steely gray. The photos once proudly framed, her late husband's fishing trip, Eli's kindergarten graduation, were gone. In their place, framed quotes about grit and boundaries. A lavender candle burned on the mantel, too sharp, too clean. "So what did you do today?" Megan asked Eli, her voice now bright and false. "Nothing much," Eli mumbled. "Studied." He didn't look at his grandmother, but he reached to touch his napkin, as if he might pass it to her. Then he stopped. They ate, forks clinking, conversation measured, laughter surgically timed. Virginia sat still, sipping slowly from her water, the paper napkin wrinkled now between her hands. She didn't cry, didn't speak, but her eyes moved, counting cabinets, memorizing the new layout of the kitchen. The cabinets she and her late husband had paid for during Megan's first remodel were gone. Stainless steel replaced with brushed black. Clean, cold, expensive. The clock ticked loudly at 6:43 p.m. No one noticed when Virginia stood and quietly excused herself. "I'll let you enjoy the cake," she said with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. Megan didn't walk her to the door. The sky outside had turned a faded lavender by the time she reached her own porch. She unlocked the door with steady hands and stepped into the warm hush of her home. Her own home. She turned on no lights. The quiet was better. Later, after a bath and a cup of lemon tea, the phone rang. Joyce's voice crackled through the receiver, edged with mischief. "So, how did your daughter honor you tonight? Roses? Ribeye? A string quartet?" Virginia looked at her reflection in the window pane, lined, composed, unreadable. "There was chicken," she said. "And 4 plates." Joyce was silent for a beat. Then, "She did not." "She did," Virginia said. "And she looked me in the eye when she said it." The line went quiet again. Then, softly, "You want me to come over?" "No," Virginia said. "I think I've got something to do." She walked slowly up the attic stairs, every step creaking like memory. At the top, she pulled the cord to the ceiling light. The bulb flickered once, then glowed steady. Dust swirled around her like ghosts in the air. She crossed the attic, past stacks of faded quilts and an old Singer sewing machine, and knelt beside the cedar chest at the back. Her fingers hesitated only a moment before lifting the lid. Inside, under an envelope, marked mortgage paid in full, was a red folder. She pulled it out gently, brushed away the dust. On the front, handwritten in her husband's block letters, deed plus titles, and beneath it, her own newer label. In case they forget who built the table. Virginia pressed her palm flat against the red folder on the kitchen table. It sat there like a sleeping animal, pulsing with history. Morning light spilled through the curtains, slanting across the papers she'd laid out with precise care. Deed to the house, bank statements, retirement records, and a stock ledger in her late husband's faded handwriting. The kettle clicked off behind her. She didn't move to pour. Not yet. Her house smelled like lemon polish and old pine, the way it always had. This was her place. And somehow that dinner, those 4 plates, that look had drawn a line around everything, made her see it not just as home, but as territory. A boundary they had underestimated. She picked up her laptop. The screen glowed to life, and she navigated to her online accounts. Passwords had been changed a few months back, by Grant, she remembered. He said it was to simplify things when he helped her with taxes. She let him. Back then. Now, as she clicked through her retirement dashboard, a sharp chill settled in her spine. Primary account manager, Grant Rowe. The words blinked up at her like a dare. She didn't gasp, didn't flinch. She just opened her flip phone, the one Megan teased her for keeping, and dialed. Colleen Bennett. It's Virginia Rowe, she said, steady as poured concrete. I want everything rerouted. Today. A pause. Then, tell me what you need. Virginia listed each item: IRA, joint trust, house deed, online banking, all of it. I want control back. Full. And I want him out of everything. Done, Colleen said. I'll send the courier by 4. You'll sign, I'll file. Virginia finally poured her tea. By noon she had pulled every folder from the walk-in pantry she'd long ago converted into a records closet. The shelves still smelled faintly of nutmeg and expired oregano. She opened a tin labeled, Thanksgiving 2012, and found Megan's handwriting on an old meal plan. Gluten-free stuffing, 3-layer apple tart, wine pairings, all performed, all image, all control. She placed the yellowing papers in a metal bowl, then lit a match. Joyce arrived without being asked. That was her way. She walked right in through the back door, a windbreaker flung over her arm and sunglasses shoved into her curls. I brought marshmallows in case this turned into a real bonfire, she joked, stepping inside. Virginia didn't smile, but her eyes softened. You can toss the ones from Christmas 2018. That one was the worst. They stood together in silence, feeding meal plans to flame, the smoke curling like ribbons through the open window. A quiet funeral for control no longer given. I'm proud of you, Joyce said, finally. I'm not there yet, Virginia replied. The fire hissed gently in the bowl. Later that evening, after the sun had sunk below the birch trees out front, her phone buzzed, a text from Eli. Just the emoji. No words, but it said enough. Virginia stared at it a moment, then typed next time, speak, and hit send. The house creaked softly, settling into itself. She stood and walked through the hall, pausing at every doorknob. She replaced them all the day after her husband passed. New brass, heavy, good in the hand. Now she wanted locks too. Ones she chose. Ones no one else had keys to. She grabbed her keys and headed out to the hardware store just before closing. When she returned, her inbox had one new alert. Unauthorized login attempt. Retirement portal user Grantro46. Access denied. Virginia let out a long, low breath. She didn't smile, but she did whisper, "That's right, not anymore." Virginia pressed the tip of her pencil against the yellow legal pad, then drew a firm line through the word family. She wrote Ginny and Joyce above it. That was the budget now. No line items for holiday gifts. No transfers to Megan's emergency fund. No dinner fund. Grant managed monthly. Just the essentials: groceries, property taxes, her subscriptions to the State Journal and Birds and Blooms, and a new line she added with care: Joyce's birthday trip, TBD. The kitchen was silent but alive. The distant ticking of the wall clock, the scent of last night's roasted carrots, still lingering in the air. On the counter beside her, the folder of financial statements sat closed. Inside, pages had been updated, accounts rerouted, and access revoked. Not a single password shared anymore. She picked up the phone and dialed without hesitation. "Colleen Bennett," came the familiar voice, smooth and direct. "It's time to rewrite the trust," Virginia said. "Megan's name comes out. I want full revocability for now, but firm language for later." Colleen didn't ask why. She simply replied, "Understood. I'll send you draft language by morning." Virginia stood for a long moment after hanging up, staring at the refrigerator. A photo of Eli, age 7, in a dinosaur hoodie, was still magneted near the handle. He hadn't looked at her during dinner that night, but he had seen her. That was something. She opened the drawer beside the fridge and pulled out a cloth-bound book she hadn't touched in years. It was supposed to be a recipe journal, a gift from Megan one Christmas, back when things still had warmth. The pages were blank, save for a single entry at the front in Virginia's handwriting: "Mom's Sunday stew. Add extra time." She flipped to a new page. At the top, she wrote the title in block letters: Entitlement. Then she wrote the ingredients: one grown daughter with a short memory, a son-in-law who prefers silence to spine, a generous mother, slow to anger, quick to forgive 45 years of overlooked things. She closed the journal and exhaled, long and deep. The air outside had shifted, cooler now, whispering of early spring, even though March still had snow on its breath. At dusk, the sound of bicycle tires crunching gravel drifted through the window. Virginia peeked through the side curtain. Eli, helmet askew, leaned his bike against the fence. He walked up the porch steps and knocked just once. When no answer came, he waited, looked down at the ground, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a single purple tulip, fresh from the floral shop 2 blocks over. He tucked it into the empty milk jar beside the door. Virginia didn't open the door, but she stood just beyond it, hand resting on the knob, eyes closed, listening to the silence he left behind. Later that evening, she climbed the attic stairs again. She moved slower this time, not from doubt, but from weight. Deliberate. The kind of walk you take when you're carrying history. In the corner near the cedar chest, she spotted them, her husband's old garden shoes, laces frayed and soles cracked. She lifted them gently, pressing her fingers along the worn insides. Dirt still clung to the bottom. He had planted so much. Not just food, but roots, legacy, and he'd trusted her to tend it after he was gone. Downstairs, she lit a small beeswax candle on the dining table. She took a thick envelope from her desk drawer, slid in 3 documents, and sealed it shut. On the front, in careful pen: to Megan Rowe, subject: irrevocable decision pending. She affixed a stamp, and in the stillness of the night, as the candle flickered low, she whispered, "You can't inherit what you never respected." The invitation sat unopened on the kitchen counter, cream-colored cardstock with scalloped edges, addressed in Megan's careful cursive. Brunch for friends, Sunday at 11 a.m., hosted by Megan Rowe. Friends, not family, not mother, not you. Virginia placed her teacup directly on top of it. No coaster. She had already decided. She would not attend. But that wasn't enough. Silence had gotten her nowhere. This time she would respond. She opened her laptop, typed in the name of the local food bank, and clicked donate. In the memo field, she wrote, "In honor of Megan Rowe, who always made sure the table was just full enough." The confirmation email came seconds later. She printed it, folded it neatly, and slipped it into a plain envelope addressed to Megan's home. No note, no return address, just facts and consequences. Then she picked up the phone. "Colleen Bennett," came the calm voice on the line. "I need new language in the trust. Virginia said. Her voice had the steadiness of someone laying bricks. Colleen didn't interrupt. I wanted to say in clear legal terms that in the event of my death, Megan Rowe shall inherit nothing, not a cent, not the home, not the silver her father polished every Memorial Day. Understood, Colleen said after a beat. I'll have it to you for signature tomorrow. Virginia hung up. The line went dead, but the finality lingered in the air like a gavel still swinging. Her inbox pinged. From Grant Rowe, subject. Can we talk? Just us. Please. Virginia hovered over the message for half a breath, then clicked forward and typed one word. Colleen. She hit send. Joyce stopped by that afternoon with a bag of frozen berries and gossip. Word is Megan's still planning brunch like nothing's wrong. Either she's delusional or she thinks this'll all pass. Virginia arched an eyebrow, slicing a lemon in half. I'm not a weather system. I don't pass. Joyce grinned and plopped the berries into the sink. You're not isolating, you know. You're insulating. Big difference. Virginia didn't reply, but she looked toward the back patio where the old garden chairs sat, wobbly, faded, inherited from a neighbor years ago. She'd always kept 5. That night she ordered a new set online, polished eucalyptus wood, cream cushions, classic but firm, only 4 chairs. No 5th. The wind picked up as dusk fell, rustling the ivy against the kitchen windows. She set a kettle on the stove and reached again for her recipe journal. A fresh page. No food this time. Title: Reserves. Ingredients: 2 friends who speak truth, 1 lawyer who doesn't flinch, and exactly 0 need for permission. She was mid-sip when the doorbell rang. She paused. No one came by unannounced. Not anymore. She opened the door to find Megan standing stiffly on the porch, wrapped in a belted coat too light for the cold, arms crossed like a fortress. I'm not here to argue, Megan said. I'm here to talk logistics. Virginia didn't step aside. Logistics? For the estate. The house. What happens long term? I figured we could be rational. Behind her the wind caught a loose edge of Megan's coat and flapped it like a flag. Virginia tilted her head. You're assuming you're still part of the plan. I'm your daughter. You were. Megan blinked. Just once. Then straightened. You're being dramatic. No, Virginia said softly. I'm being deliberate. They stood like that. 2 women, 1 porch, 3 decades of tension distilled into one breathless silence. Inside, the kettle whistled. Megan stepped through the front door without waiting to be invited, her boots clicking sharply on the hardwood Virginia had refinished with her own hands the year after her husband died. She wore tailored slacks, a slate-colored blouse, and a practiced expression, the kind corporate women wear to mediation meetings, not family homes. Virginia stood just inside the living room, framed by the soft gold of late afternoon light filtering through the lace curtains. She didn't move, didn't greet, just let the silence tighten like a drawn string. Megan exhaled dramatically and walked in, scanning the room as if checking for something. Her gaze lingered on the bookshelf, where a photo of Eli used to sit. It was gone. I think it's time we move forward, Megan said, easing her purse off her shoulder. The smile she forced was smooth, social, synthetic. No more tension. No more ultimatums. Virginia's voice was a thread pulled from still fabric. We already are. A flicker passed over Megan's face. Not confusion, annoyance. Look, I don't want to rehash that dinner, she continued, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. It wasn't meant as an insult. It was just logistics. Space. You know how tight things are lately. Is that what you call setting 4 plates when 5 people walk in? Virginia asked quietly. Megan's smile didn't waver. It was a misunderstanding, one that I think we're both ready to put behind us. Outside, a soft thump broke the stillness. Joyce settling herself on the porch swing, yarn bag at her feet, needles already clacking. Her presence wasn't subtle. She was there for moral ballast, not cover. Megan turned slightly toward the sound. She's still here? Virginia didn't answer. Instead, she gestured lightly to the wingback chair opposite her. Megan sat down, legs crossed, eyes now scanning, walls, photos, papers, signs of what had changed. She looked nervous in that particular polished way, the kind of nerves that stem not from fear but from losing leverage. I heard through Grant that you're making changes to the trust, Megan said, her tone carefully neutral. I just thought I should hear it from you. Virginia tilted her head. Changes. You know what I'm referring to. Megan's voice hardened. You've had Colleen on speed dial. I have Colleen on retainer, Virginia said, stepping into the kitchen. Her footsteps were deliberate, heels soft against the linoleum. No coffee brewed, no kettle boiled. She returned carrying nothing but a single sheet of paper. Thick-stocked, legal header, signature line at the bottom. She laid it on the coffee table between them. Megan leaned forward. Read, blinked, then straightened. You can't be serious. Revocation of heirship, Virginia said calmly. It's quite serious. You'll find the appropriate signatures and notary stamp already affixed. This isn't how families operate. Virginia smiled. Small. Sharp. Then perhaps you should have acted like one. Megan stood, the chair groaning slightly beneath her abrupt motion. You'll regret this. Virginia looked toward the porch where Joyce sat, rocking gently, listening to every word. No, she said. I've already regretted too much. Now I'm correcting. Megan's jaw clenched. Do you really want Eli to see you like this? Virginia took a slow breath. I want Eli to see what accountability looks like. Megan stormed out without another word, her heels echoing too loudly down the steps. The screen door snapped shut behind her like a verdict. Inside, Virginia collected the revocation document, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it beneath her recipe journal. Joyce knocked once on the window, held up a thumbs up with her knitting needle, then kept rocking. The phone rang an hour later. Virginia let it ring twice before answering. Colleen Bennett. The voice came steady through the line. Yes, it's finalized. Amendments filed. Megan has no standing in the trust, estate, or any survivorship claims. It's done. Virginia closed her eyes. And this time she smiled for real. The aroma of beef stew drifted through Virginia's kitchen, rich with thyme and garlic and something deeper, something earned. The windows fogged slightly as the simmering pot let off slow, confident steam, and her dining room flickered with the soft glow of mismatched candles, some tall, some squat, all half-burned and pulled from old drawers. Outside, the sky dipped into a violet dusk. Inside, the house vibrated with something warm and living, not a performance, a claiming. Joyce arrived first, wearing bright orange earrings, shaped like teacups and holding a lemon pie she claimed was accidentally perfect. Colleen followed 15 minutes later, holding a bottle of red and a tin of saltine crackers. Don't ask, just eat them with the stew. By 6, 3 neighbors from the block had wandered in, Mrs. Lopez from across the street, a young couple who'd just moved in last fall, and old Mr. Fenley, who brought a 6-pack of root beer and stories about the 1982 blizzard. No one had asked for, but everyone welcomed. Virginia set the table without symmetry. Floral plates, plain plates, chipped mugs, cloth napkins that didn't match. Her husband had once said, if the food is right, the dishes don't need to agree. She'd always remembered that. Ella Fitzgerald played softly on the Bluetooth speaker Joyce had helped her set up last week. The trumpet swirled through the room like smoke, smooth and low. The stew was served directly from the pot in the center of the table, ladled out with slow pride. The room filled with the sounds of spoons clinking, laughter rising, wood chairs scraping gently on the floor. Conversation flowed in layers, light, meandering, broken by stretches of easy quiet. At one point, as Virginia refilled Colleen's glass, a quiet knock echoed at the door. Not a knock, really, more of a tap. She walked over, opened it slowly. No one, but something was there on the welcome mat, an envelope. Small, square, cream-colored. She bent down and picked it up. Inside was a handwritten note in blue ink. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Eli. No flourish. No ask for forgiveness. Just enough. Virginia tucked it gently into the front cover of her recipe journal. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. But heard. She returned to the table and lifted her glass. I'd like to make a toast, she said, her voice clear, steady, carrying weight. Everyone paused. Even Mr. Fenley stopped mid-cracker. Virginia held her glass just above the candlelight. To women who eat after they're told there's nothing left. There was a brief, breathless moment before Joyce let out a damn right and raised her own glass. To Virginia, Colleen added, lifting her wine. To pie and root beer and beef stew, Mrs. Lopez said with a laugh. Glasses clinked. A few guests wiped their eyes discreetly. The kind of tears you shed when something has shifted in the room and you're not sure what, only that it matters. Later, as Virginia walked Colleen out the night cool and full of distant crickets, the attorney paused on the porch steps. You know, Colleen said, I heard the place next door is going up for sale. Virginia looked toward the dark house beside hers, shutters half closed, grass overgrown along the back fence. Oh, she said, voice light but eyes suddenly sharp. Colleen gave a small shrug. Just something to consider. Wouldn't it be something if both sides of the fence belonged to you? Virginia didn't answer right away. She watched the porch light flicker gently, like a thought still forming. Then she said, it would be poetic. The house next door sat quiet, forgotten, the way some people try to forget their guilt by repainting it beige and pretending the cracks in the foundation don't show. But Virginia saw through all that. She always had. 2 weeks after the dinner she hosted herself, Colleen sent a brief message. Offer accepted. Title transfer initiated. You're now the silent owner of 178 East Wesley, pending recording. Virginia stared at the screen for a moment, tea growing cold in her hand. Then she walked to the back window and looked out over the low hedges between her home and Megan's. The sun was setting behind the roofs, streaking the sky orange and ash. Somewhere in the distance, a mower buzzed. She didn't smile, but she did nod. Within 3 days, a work crew pulled into the driveway of 178 East Wesley. Young people, volunteers from the high school mentorship program Joyce helped sponsor, eager to patch drywall, tear out carpet, lay stone for a backyard path. She greeted them with cookies and lemonade but offered no explanation. They didn't need one. By the end of the week, the fence went up. Not picket, not ornamental. A tall, sturdy wall of cedar planks, planed smooth and sealed in weatherproof stain. No gaps, no view. Megan's text arrived that same night, just after 10 p.m. What's going on over there? Virginia stared at it for exactly 4 seconds before locking her phone and placing it face down on the windowsill. Everything all right? Joyce asked from the other side of the kitchen, where she was decapitating a sunflower to dry its seeds. Virginia wiped her hands on a dish towel. That's what peace looks like from your side. Joyce raised an eyebrow. And from her side? Virginia shrugged. Privacy. Same thing, depending on how you earned it. As the weeks passed, the little house next door transformed. The rotting deck was replaced with a small garden terrace. Inside, faded wallpaper came down to reveal clean white walls, new fixtures, clean floors. Every corner echoed with possibility. One morning, Virginia watched as the youth group hoisted a small metal plaque into the new flower bed, just off the porch. Etched in block letters, reserved for guests who bring nothing but love. She didn't take a photo. She didn't need to. A few days later, as she opened a stack of mail at her kitchen table, she noticed one envelope that didn't match the others. Plain, government issue, the return address from the county tax office. Her stomach tightened, but she didn't flinch. She slid her letter opener through the seal. Inside was a notice, routine at first glance, but the numbers didn't add up. She read it again, and again. According to property tax records, Megan's home, the one next to hers, was listed as jointly held. One of the names on record, Virginia Rowe. She felt the temperature in the room shift, like air pressure dropping before a storm. Her name, her liability, her signature forged. She set the letter down slowly, the edges curling under her fingers as the truth sunk in. This wasn't a mistake. This was maneuver. Grant's maneuver. And it had just crossed the wrong line. The fraud investigator's office was cold in the way government buildings always are, over air-conditioned, scrubbed of personality, sterile in color and tone. Virginia sat on the edge of a rigid plastic chair, her leather folder resting on her lap like a weapon she didn't need to swing. Not yet. Across from her, a young man with a buzz cut and the polite detachment of someone trained not to assume anything flipped through the stack of documents she'd provided. Deed photocopies, tax filing, online banking logs, the forged signature that bore her name but none of her handwriting. He looked up. "Miss Rowe, you're absolutely sure you didn't authorize this?" Virginia didn't blink. "I didn't authorize someone to use my name. I didn't sign off on that property. And I certainly didn't list myself as co-owner of a house that hasn't invited me through its door in 3 years." He nodded slowly. "Your son-in-law Grant Rowe claimed he made the change for expediency. Said it was temporary. Just a paperwork shortcut." Virginia leaned forward. Her voice was calm but cold enough to frost the window behind her. "You don't accidentally sign someone else's name and give them tax liability. That's not a shortcut. That's theft in cursive." The investigator almost smiled, but caught himself. "We'll open a formal case. I can't promise how quickly the county will process it, but this is substantial." She nodded once. "I've already spoken to my attorney. I just wanted the law to know first." By the time Virginia returned home, Colleen had already drafted the complaint. 5 pages. Bulletproof. "He's lost all financial access, completely scrubbed," Colleen said over the phone. "Banks, online logins, auto payments, everything's rerouted under your direct control." "Good," Virginia said. She opened a drawer in the hallway table, pulled out a manila envelope, and slid Colleen's printouts inside. Another copy went into her purse. Then, she drove slow, steady, to the Dane County Sheriff's Department. The front desk deputy didn't ask why a 74-year-old woman in a pressed cardigan and orthopedic shoes was handing over a legal packet. He simply asked for her name. "Virginia Rowe," she said. "This is for your records. There's a fraud complaint underway." Outside, the air smelled like cut grass and engine oil. She took a deep breath, letting it sit in her chest. That evening, the silence of her kitchen was broken by her cell phone vibrating across the counter. "Megan." Virginia let it ring twice, then picked up. "I hope you realize what you're doing," Megan said without greeting. "Grant didn't mean to. This was never supposed to be some big legal thing." "It is a legal thing," Virginia replied, her voice as even as it had been in the investigator's office. "You signed your name onto a silence you never earned. And now it's echoing back. It was paperwork, Mom. He was just trying to help streamline some things. You're making this look malicious." "Was it not malicious?" There was a pause. Then Megan's tone shifted, clipped and sharp. "Fine. If this gets out, don't think it won't make us both look bad. People will start asking questions." Virginia smiled, not out of joy, but recognition. "The same tactic, the same threat," she said quietly. "Go public then. You don't think that would be humiliating for you?" Virginia's response was clean, surgical. "With your receipts?" The line went dead. She stood at the counter for a while, hands wrapped around her tea mug, though the tea had long gone lukewarm. Outside, porch lights blinked on across the street, one by one, like little beacons against the night. She returned to her desk to file the last batch of papers when she spotted the envelope, unmarked, but not unexpected. Inside, a single sheet. Subject: feature pitch, aging, autonomy, and accountability. From Claire Young, Dane County Chronicle. "We'd love to speak with you." Virginia read it twice, then leaned back in her chair, exhaling like someone who knew her time was no longer being borrowed. Virginia didn't need makeup. Claire, the young journalist from the Dane County Chronicle, offered to bring a stylist. Virginia declined. Her only preparation for the interview was baking a fresh lemon loaf and watering the hydrangeas lining her garden fence. Claire arrived with a small notepad, a phone recorder, and a photographer named Jonah, who looked barely 20, and wore 2 cameras like armor. Virginia poured tea into mismatched mugs, while Claire sat up at the patio table, eyes already scanning the space with a writer's hunger. So Claire said gently, clicking her pen, "Why now?" Virginia took her time stirring honey into her tea. "Because silence only keeps things tidy." "Not true." The garden buzzed with late spring energy, bumblebees nuzzling lavender, the scent of fresh mulch and old lilacs. A breeze fluttered the edge of Virginia's blouse and sent a napkin tumbling across the patio stones. Jonah crouched down low for the photo, capturing her mid-sip sunlight, catching the silver in her hair. Claire asked about inheritance, about financial abuse masked as family duty, about dignity. Virginia answered plainly. Not bitter, not weepy, just facts and fire. They called it efficiency, she said. I call it erasure. There's a difference between being helped and being handled. Claire's brow furrowed thoughtfully. Were you afraid to speak out? Virginia smiled, not at the question, but at how many people probably were. No, she said. I was afraid of staying quiet long enough to become convenient. The article ran that Sunday. Front page. The fifth plate. One woman's stand for financial autonomy. The photo Virginia in her garden, tea in hand, a single dandelion tucked behind her ear, was striking in its simplicity, powerful in its peace. Megan saw it. Of course she did. At exactly 9:12 a.m., Virginia's phone buzzed with a text from Eli. They're furious, but I'm proud. I mean that. Virginia held the phone against her chest for a moment before replying, I know. That afternoon, Colleen arrived with a small folder, embossed with her firm's logo. She handed it to Virginia like a gift too important to be wrapped. The paperwork's finalized, Colleen said. The Roe Fund is official. Women over 60. Any background. Full tuition coverage for community college or retraining. Virginia's eyes didn't water, but her voice caught for just a second. It'll outlive me. That's the point, Colleen said. Within days, letters began trickling in. Folded notes, typed pages, postcards in shaky cursive. Some came from strangers, some from quiet neighbors she'd never spoken to beyond a polite wave. One woman wrote, "You made me realize my kids don't get to use my guilt as currency." Another, "I'm 82, and just changed my will for the first time. Thank you." Virginia tucked each letter into a shoebox lined with blue felt. She didn't tell anyone, just kept them near her desk. Then came the courier. A man in a windbreaker handed her a flat envelope and asked her to sign. Inside was a formal letterhead. Legal, cold. Notice of contestation. Amendment to estate filed by Megan Roe. Virginia read it once, then again. It wasn't unexpected, but it was bold. Megan was challenging the irrevocable decision, trying to undo it, to claw her way back into an inheritance she'd forfeited the second she set 4 plates and left her mother out. Virginia placed the letter beside the newspaper clipping and sipped her tea. Colleen would handle it. The story was public now, and Virginia, she was no longer just a woman omitted from a family meal. She was a headline, a fund, a voice in hundreds of homes that had gone too long unheard. She looked out the window at her garden. The plaque still gleamed in the sun, reserved for guests who bring nothing but love. She whispered not to anyone, but just enough for the wind to hear. Try me. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and stale air conditioning, sterile and indifferent. Virginia sat in the second row, back straight, purse at her feet, hands folded neatly in her lap. The seat creaked when she shifted, but she didn't mind. She wanted them to hear she was still there. Megan sat 3 rows up, flanked by a lawyer in a pinstripe suit, and Grant, who looked pale and somehow smaller in the heavy light. Megan wore black, too sharply tailored for the setting, and too confident for someone on unstable ground. Judge Morrow, a woman with steel gray hair and a reputation for zero patience, adjusted her glasses and flipped through the thick stack of filings Colleen had submitted. Clean, chronological, unshakable. Let the record show this is a hearing on the contestation of the estate amendment filed by Virginia Roe, the clerk announced. Virginia didn't flinch. Megan, on the other hand, kept tapping her foot beneath the table, the click of her heel breaking rhythm every time the judge asked another question. Miss Roe, Judge Morrow said, looking over the rim of her glasses, you stated in your affidavit that the amendment was made without your knowledge, but that you also believed the original trust had no intention of excluding you. Megan cleared her throat. Yes, Your Honor. My mother made the change under stress. I think the press coverage made her feel pressured. She wasn't thinking clearly. Judge Morrow's eyes narrowed. So you're alleging media exposure influenced a legal decision she filed with her attorney 3 weeks prior. A pause. I don't have exact dates, Megan said. Colleen didn't speak. She didn't need to. The documents already had. Grant tried to lean forward and whisper something to Megan, but the judge snapped. He is not the one being questioned. Virginia remained silent throughout, not a single word. She didn't even look at her daughter. She focused instead on the wall clock above the judge's bench. Time passing, time earned. After another 20 minutes of cross-reference, the judge leaned back and closed the file with finality. This court finds no grounds to reverse the amendment. Furthermore, it upholds the validity of the fraud claim related to the unauthorized use of Miss Rowe's name on the tax deed filing. Megan's face stiffened. Judge Morrow continued. A civil penalty will be issued to Miss Rowe for misrepresentation. Access to all financial assets of the plaintiff is permanently barred. Silence dropped like a curtain. Colleen offered a short nod. Virginia gave none. She didn't need to win with words. She'd already won by showing up. The judge banged the gavel. Case closed. As the courtroom emptied, Eli rose from a back bench and walked quietly up the aisle. He didn't say much, just reached the door ahead of her and opened it wide. She looked at him for a moment, then stepped through. "Proud of you," he said, voice low. "I know," she said. Outside, the air was warm and full of summer, the sky marbled with slow-moving clouds. Her cane tapped softly against the cement as they crossed the lot. That night, just before bed, she sorted through her mail. A few ads, a utility notice, and one envelope with no return address, only her name in looping cursive. Inside was a short note. "I watched that courtroom like a mirror. Megan is my sister, but she's not my keeper. If you ever want company that remembers who you are, I'm nearby." Lynn Rowe. Virginia read it twice, folded it cleanly, and placed it inside her recipe journal, right between entitlement and reserves. Virginia moved her fingers slowly down the lined yellow pad, each name handwritten in deliberate loops. Neighbors, colleagues from her old school, Joyce's bridge partner, the woman who runs the flower stall at the Sunday market. 24 names in total. Each one had earned their place not through blood, but through presence. At the top of the list, she'd written in all caps, "No exceptions." Megan's name wasn't there. Not even crossed out, just never added. The community center smelled like lemon oil and something faintly metallic, folding chairs, old radiator heat. It had once been a church basement, now converted into a cheerful multi-purpose space with pale blue walls and a ceiling that leaked when the snow melted fast. Virginia reserved it for April 15th. No reason, just a date that felt like hers. Joyce arrived 2 hours early, of course with a box of paper lanterns and a clipboard she'd stolen from a bake sale committee 5 years ago. "It's not a party unless someone has a clipboard," she said, taping a welcome sign above the coffee station. Eli showed up next, taller than she remembered, with a soft-looking girl named Lila, who wore overalls and brought her own tape. "I'm good at streamers," she said shyly, and Virginia instantly believed her. The tables were long and borrowed, their legs uneven, mismatched linens, plates from 3 different thrift stores, tulips in old mason jars. Everything imperfect, everything intentional. At precisely noon, the room began to fill. Quietly, steadily, the guest list came to life. Mr. Fenley brought root beer again. The florist arrived with a bouquet of dahlias the size of grapefruit. The girl from the diner down the road, Sam, with the chipped black nail polish, hugged Virginia like they'd known each other for years. Eli dimmed the overhead lights, just as Virginia stepped forward. She wore slate blue, the same color Megan had worn to court. But on Virginia, it looked like resolve, not defense. She didn't use a microphone. She didn't need one. "This table," she began, letting her gaze drift across the gathered faces, "grew larger the day I let it shrink." A few heads tilted, confused. Then the room shifted. Eyes softened, some hands stilled mid-bite. I used to think I had to keep every seat filled to be whole, she continued, even if those sitting in them brought nothing but shadows. But letting go of a chair that harms you? That's not loss. That's grace. Polite applause followed, then a burst. Joyce let out a loud humph of approval, and raised her plastic cup of lemonade. To the best-dressed general in the quietest war, she whispered as she sat back down beside Virginia. Virginia chuckled under her breath. You've always known how to overstate. Joyce leaned closer, lowering her voice. You still set a better table, whether they admit it or not. The afternoon passed like a slow waltz, easy, measured, real. Lila played guitar in the corner. Someone handed Virginia a thank you card shaped like a teapot. No one asked about Megan. No one needed to. As guests began to trickle out, Virginia stood at the door, shaking hands and holding arms, whispering gentle affirmations into aging shoulders and young palms alike. Then a courier entered. Jeans, ball cap, no emotion. He didn't say much, just handed her a sealed envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Too familiar. She held it like something delicate, something timed, something long overdue. On the front, Virginia Rowe. No mom, no mother, just her full name, written in Megan's looping script. Virginia didn't open it. Not yet. She tucked it into the inside pocket of her coat, and returned to the last guest still standing, Ely, holding Lila's hand. You good? He asked softly. Virginia smiled. I'm whole. But her fingers traced the edge of the envelope, as her other hand reached for a broom. Virginia sat alone at her dining table, sunlight striping the wood through the blinds, like bars she'd long since bent open. The envelope lay where she'd placed it last night, dead center, uncreased, untouched. Megan's handwriting stared back at her like a relic from a woman she no longer recognized. She lifted it gently, weighing it in her palm, not heavy, just thick enough to mean something, but not thick enough to undo anything. Without a word, she opened the drawer beneath the table, nudged aside an old pencil sharpener, and slipped the letter beneath a stack of bills she already planned to ignore. Then she closed the drawer, quietly, as if sealing something deeper. Outside, the air was crisp but not cold. The garden, just beginning to wake from its winter hush, wore its vulnerability in soft greens and tentative buds. The stone path was still wet from last night's rain, and Virginia walked it slowly, trailing one hand along the lavender stems just brave enough to bloom. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Ely leaned against the fence gate, hands in his jacket pockets, a familiar sheepishness on his face. Hey, he said. She didn't rush, just met him where he stood. I heard about the luncheon, he said. Lila said it was beautiful. It was, Virginia replied, and it was mine. Ely nodded, gaze dropping. I just wanted to say. He paused, swallowed. You didn't give up, even when they did. Virginia took his hand, not to hold it, but to press something into it. The journal. The recipe one. Cloth bound, corners soft from wear. It smelled faintly of nutmeg and cedar. Ely blinked. What's this? You'll know what to do with it, she said. He opened it and saw the first few entries. Entitlement, reserves, what forgiveness is not, no flour measurements, no oven temperatures, just ingredients of a different kind. His lips parted to speak, but no words came. She smiled gently, and tapped the journal once. You don't need to say anything. Just remember to read it when you're angry, or confused, or becoming them. They stood like that for a moment, suspended between two generations, and the unspoken promise of not repeating mistakes. Later that day, Virginia sat at her desk in the study, and opened her laptop. The screen's glow warmed her face. She drafted one final email to Colleen. Subject: Final Trust Execution Body. All terms approved. Please initiate the permanent schedule and freeze all contingent clauses. There are no future edits. We're done. She hit send. Joyce arrived just after dinner time, holding a half-empty bottle of sparkling cider and a bag of lemon scones. Thought I'd check in before you wandered off into sainthood, she teased, stepping inside without waiting. Virginia motioned toward the back patio. They sat beneath string lights that flickered lazily in the evening breeze. Joyce sipped, watched her, then said, "Your piece is louder than her name now." Virginia didn't respond, didn't need to. Her quiet had grown strong enough to say it all. Then Joyce froze. "Ginny," she said, nodding toward the road. Virginia turned to look. Across the hedge, just past the property line, Megan's front lawn stood empty except for one new object staked into the soil. "For sale." Freshly printed, bold letters, and below it a realtor's sign swinging gently in the wind. Virginia didn't speak. She simply leaned back, folded her hands across her lap, and exhaled. A storm had passed, and it wasn't hers anymore. The moving truck arrived at dawn, too early for anyone decent to be watching, yet nearly every curtain on the street twitched open. The hum of idle gossip charged the morning air, thick as humidity before a summer storm. Virginia didn't watch from behind glass. She stood on her porch in a navy cardigan, arms folded, tea cooling on the rail. Joyce sat beside her, cross-legged in a deck chair, knitting something that didn't seem to resemble anything yet. "You think they'll say goodbye?" Joyce asked, not looking up from her yarn. Virginia gave a soft, almost amused exhale. "They already did. Just took their time about it." Across the lawn, Megan stood near the moving van in a fitted jacket, issuing clipped orders to two young movers. Grant paced nervously, holding a clipboard but checking nothing. Their voices didn't carry, but their body language said everything: rushed, frayed, cornered. It hadn't taken much. A missed mortgage payment here. A quiet withdrawal of support from family trust there. The market dipped, taxes rose, and Colin, sharp as ever, moved fast when the foreclosure hit public notice. Virginia acquired the property under a holding firm, clean and discreet. Officially, it was Wesley Foundation Properties, but in spirit it belonged to someone who remembered being denied a plate at the table. The truck's lift groaned, carrying the last of Megan's curated furniture into the metal maw. No one waved goodbye. No one came to help. As they pulled away, Mr. Fenley across the street raised his coffee mug in a small, satisfied toast. By the following week, contractors arrived to remove the privacy fence. The act wasn't meant to invite. It was meant to breathe. Virginia walked through the empty house, now hers, and ran her hand along the banister. Polished, hollow feeling. It smelled like lemon cleaner and recently uprooted arrogance. Still, she didn't celebrate. She got to work. Colleen handled permits. Joyce rallied the local nonprofit. Eli, bless him, brought volunteers from his high school and Lila's campus group. Drywall came down. Cabinets were donated. The too expensive light fixtures Grant had installed were replaced with softer, warmer sconces, and 2 months later the house reopened. Rowe Place Transitional Home for Women and Seniors, etched in brass on a plaque beside the new lilac bush. The welcome tea was simple. Folding chairs on the new back patio, mismatched mugs, again lemon scones, and a pitcher of hibiscus iced tea. No speeches, no camera crews, just introductions and second chances. Virginia stood near the edge of the gathering, not center stage. That wasn't her place anymore. Eli found her after helping one of the residents carry a potted fern to her room. He looked around at the women chatting quietly, some knitting, some just sitting with their hands finally still. "This was an empty house," he said. "You built something from nothing." Virginia glanced sideways at him. "No," she said. "I built something from being told I was nothing." Eli didn't argue. He just pulled his phone from his pocket and took a photo of her, not posed, not planned. Just her in the middle of what she'd reclaimed. As dusk fell, a quiet buzz vibrated in Virginia's purse. She checked it. Email, from Megan Rowe. Subject: "You've made your point." The message preview ended there. Virginia tapped the screen once, didn't open it. She looked up at the house. The porch light glowing soft gold, laughter rising from inside like steam from a stovetop. And then she whispered, half to herself, half to the woman she used to be, "You haven't even seen the point yet." The folding tables were draped in hand-stitched runners Virginia had found boxed up in the attic, her mother-in-law's work, still smelling faintly of cedar and forgotten intention. The garden buzzed with low conversation, music from a Bluetooth speaker tucked beneath the lilac bush, and the scent of grilled corn and cinnamon-baked apples, donated by a local church group. There wasn't a single empty seat. Virginia had made sure of that. Every guest had a place card, written in her careful cursive thick cardstock, pressed gently into handmade clay holders. Lila had fired in her campus kiln. Names that had once been whispered, ignored, or erased now sat boldly at each plate. Joyce arrived wearing a wide straw hat decorated with fake peonies and real confidence. "I brought butter," she announced, holding up a porcelain dish like a trophy. "And my throat because someone's gotta sing." Virginia smiled. "It's open mic, not open throat." Joyce winked. "Then you better mic this throat quick." Eli sat near the edge of the lawn, tuning his guitar under the shadow of the old elm tree. He'd grown into his gentleness, still soft-spoken, but no longer unsure. His fingers moved over the strings like a remembered prayer. Midway through the gathering, Virginia stepped onto the garden, stepping stone path. The crowd quieted, not at once, but like dominoes, one person stopping, then the next, until all eyes turned to her. Her speech was short, intentionally so. "The table," she began, voice steady, "always has room, but not for harm." There was no applause at first, just a shared breath, a stillness that said we understand. Then the clapping came, slow, honest, unscripted. Joyce stood, cleared her throat, and without fanfare, began to sing Blue Skies in a voice unpolished but heartfelt. Eli followed, strumming low and easy. Others joined in humming, then a few words. The kind of group harmony that only forms when no one's trying to outsing anyone else. Virginia stepped back, letting her hands rest gently on the back of a chair. The late afternoon light stretched long across the yard, golden and forgiving. A breeze lifted the edge of a tablecloth and set it fluttering like a wave. As the final notes faded, Colleen approached with a brass plaque tucked under her arm. "You ready?" she asked. Virginia nodded. Together they installed it beneath the largest rosebush, facing the seating area. The words etched into it were deliberate. "Earned. Forgiveness isn't inclusion. Not bitter, just true." She turned as someone placed a teacup in her hand. Mrs. Lopez from down the street whispered, "That's what healing looks like, right?" Virginia simply raised her cup in quiet agreement. The sun dipped lower. Laughter rose. A few kids began kicking a soccer ball in the far end of the yard. The smell of warm scones drifted through the air, and then Eli walked toward her, slow, almost shy again. In his hand, a small velvet box. Virginia raised an eyebrow. "You proposing, sweetheart?" He grinned. In a way. He opened the lid. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a worn wood-handled recipe card holder, her old one long thought lost. Scuffed edges, corners softened by decades. Nestled inside were the original cards. Her mother's roast, her husband's cornbread, the apple crisp recipe. Eli once spilled grape juice on as a kid. Virginia pressed a hand to her chest. "Where did you?" "You left it in the crawl space of the old pantry," he said. "I found it when we were doing demo next door. Figured you might want it back." She lifted the card holder slowly, like it might vanish if handled too fast. "This is a meal in itself." Eli nodded. "A table in a box." The steam from Virginia's mug curled upward, catching the early morning light like a whisper rising from bone. The garden path was quiet beneath her slippers, freshly swept, lined with trimmed rose bushes and creeping thyme that smelled sharp and alive beneath her steps. She walked slowly, not because her knees demanded it, but because she wanted to feel every corner of what was now hers, not in ownership, but in design. This patch of earth, this row of homes, had once excluded her with polite smiles and inherited entitlement. Now it pulsed with invitation. A woman in a yellow scarf waved from the porch of the transitional house, her old house, now repurposed and renamed. "Morning, Miss Rowe," she called. Virginia raised her cup in return. "How's the room? Feels like mine already." Another voice joined in from the garden bed. "We're going to paint the rec room lilac this week. Just so you know." "Just so I smile," Virginia said. The screen door of her own house creaked slightly as she stepped back inside. She liked the creak. It reminded her things were still in motion. She set the mug on a coaster, her only nod to convention, and moved through the living room to her small office nook. Eli had sent an email, late last night. She pulled it up. Subject update. The Roe Fund body. Just hit full national rollout. 8 applicants in Oregon already. 1 in Vermont. I added your garden party photo to the homepage. Lila cried. Proud of you. Always. Virginia exhaled, reading it again. Then again. She turned to her side table, where the recipe card holder sat beside her journal. She opened the latter to a new page and wrote a single word at the top, legacy. Beneath it, 14 beds, 1 fund, 24 chairs, 1 quiet doorbell. Downstairs, the front door buzzed, a gentler tone than the old clanging bell she'd replaced. She opened it to find Colleen on the porch, briefcase in one hand, wind-tossed hair tucked behind one ear. "It's done," she said without ceremony. "Estate, trust, titles, all finalized. No contests, irrevocable in every way." Virginia nodded once. "So the past can't sneak back in. Only if you leave the door open," Colleen said with a wry smile. They didn't stay long. No need. The legal work was over. The healing was still ongoing, but it didn't need a signature. That evening, Virginia prepared dinner for herself. She roasted root vegetables, carrots, sweet potato, parsnips, with rosemary and garlic, then set the table in her sunlit nook. 2 plates, not 1. Joyce entered through the back, uninvited as usual, holding a bottle of elderflower soda and wearing reading glasses she didn't need. "Company?" she asked. Virginia gestured toward the table. 1 extra plate. Joyce eyed it. "For someone specific." Virginia didn't answer right away. She poured the sparkling drink into mismatched tumblers. The fizz popped like tiny bells. Then, with that same soft conviction she'd spoken with in court, in the garden, in silence, she said no, just for someone who remembers to make enough. She raised her glass. No, just for someone who remembers to make enough.